product process matrix. When you compare different processes in different operations, we will notice that there are certain types of processes that are used for products with the different volume and different variety. And many products, when they are introduced for the first time, when there is a certain innovation occurring, they are often produced in a job shop. Job shop is a kind of operation which has equipment that can produce a large variety, very customized units of product. But unfortunately, the cost per unit will be very high, and therefore the volume usually is very small because there's not that much demand for an extremely expensive product. A good example would be a carpenter who makes furniture to order. Every piece of furniture the carpenter makes might be unique, so the variety is as high as possible as it can possibly be, and volume will usually be small because it takes a lot of time to make unique equipment with designing it and actually executing. Another type of process is a batch process, where you have equipment that can process multiple units of the same type before it shifts to another type. Right? A batch process is good when you need a higher volume, somewhat higher volume, but smaller variety. Why? Because the units produced in the same batch are usually identical, right? But then we can shift to another product and start another batch for a very different product, right? Batch production, again, or batch process is used as the next step when the product volume for the product increases. And then there are assembly lines like worker-paced or machine-paced lines. When the volume is further, the desired volume is higher, and then unfortunately assembly lines allow for even less variety. For example, if you have car manufacturers, they produce one model on an assembly line is usually set up for one model of a car and very little variety, relatively speaking, can be introduced in a car. You have some options, right? The type of stereo or other customizations, but they are very limited compared to, for example, what the carpenter can make in terms of custom furniture. And then at the extreme here, when you have products that are required an extremely high volume and very standardized, so actually there isn't almost any variety at all, we usually invest in very expensive equipment, full processing plants can be built for multiple millions or even billions of dollars at this extreme because it makes sense to invest so much, because then the cost for every unit of this high volume product will be extremely low, provided we, of course, have sufficiently large demand. An example would be oil refinery, but many other examples exist. So as I said, a lot of products start here and gradually move towards the right bottom corner. Not all reach the right bottom corner. Not everything becomes reaches this point, but generally speaking, that's the tendency with new products. And one more thing I want to add is that why these corners are not attractive options. Well, in this option, right, you have a very high volume, and but if you use equipment like that allows you to produce a large variety, then in this case it wouldn't make sense from a perspective of costs, right? So, for example, if you have custom furniture, you make it in a job shop, and then every piece of furniture that is custom made will be very expensive. If you want standard like furniture like IKEA, for example, you have to move more to batch production or some assembly line, because that will lower the cost per unit. You don't have that much variety anymore, but maybe that's not required by customers. What is more required by customers here is a lower cost, right? So it wouldn't make sense to go here, because then the cost per unit would be too high and the customers wouldn't pay so much, right? On this corner, again, it doesn't make sense to have something that is very low volume, made on extremely expensive equipment that requires a very large volume to justify the investment in this equipment, right? So utilization of this equipment wouldn't be high enough to justify the costs. So it doesn't make sense, again, to be in this part of the matrix.